Do you like clubs?
Like Club Penguin.
Like golf clubs?
Like club bars.
Like going out for an dance club?
Yeah.
Do you like those?
Yeah. Pink Pony Club.
Yeah. Do you like Worlds?
Oh, I like the World.
Like World 2-1 in Mario Bros?
Yeah.
Like the forthcoming Mario Kart World?
Yeah.
Do you like those?
Yeah, competing at the Worlds.
Yes. Yeah.
The World Trade Center. No, wait, I'm going to cut me saying that. I realised what I said just after I said it.
No, we're leaving that in. That's fine.
My bad. Sorry. I just said words.
Do you like cups?
Yeah, I drink out of them quite regularly.
Excellent. Well, you're going to love the Club World Cup coming soon to a rugby near you. So, we have heard word that on Friday, before the European finals, between Bath and Lyon and then Northampton and Bordeaux. For more on those, or more one of those, please check out the main channel. We went deep into the Champions Cup final.
Let's just do 3 words each on the Challenge Cup final. So we
covered it comprehensively.
Big up Bath.
Yeah, good one, Johan.
Good one.
So, right, the day before those finals, on the Friday afternoon, the EPCR board met to discuss some things, right? One of them, I believe, was the possibility of Women's European Cup, which would be exciting. I believe the proposal at the minute is we would have 4 teams qualify. You'd have the winner of the PWR, winner of the Elite 1 in France. You'd have the winner of the Celtic Challenge. And then you'd have, it looks like the winner of the Spanish competition. Would all qualify. They'd play a semi-final and play a final on the same weekend, the finals weekend, in the same venue, which would be great.
I would love that.
I'd be all for that.
Because we don't get to see the women's top 4 or the feminine teams.
I want to see Toulouse play. Yeah. I want to see these teams play, right? I want more of that.
Let us watch Los Santos play rugby again.
Absolutely. Give us more Pauline. That's what we all want. So that's one of the proposals that is currently up in the air. I think they're hoping to do it. However, the one that was agreed and decided and finalised was the Club World Cup, right? And I believe you haven't kept much abreast of this.
No, I've not seen that much about this, which is why that's what we're doing in this video, is essentially you're going to pitch it to me, I suppose. With that in mind, I will tell you my opinion of it as we start, and that might change by the end of this video. In concept, I like it.
Yeah.
I like the thought of a Club World Cup because it brings together the different kinds of rugby that are played all over the place. And I think this was one of the arguments when the South African teams were introduced to the ORC and then Europe after that, was, well, we get to blend these different types of rugby. And that's a really good thing, that South Africa play rugby in a very different style to what we do over here in the Northern Hemisphere. But like France play rugby in a very different style to what they do in England. And you look at like Super Rugby in New Zealand and in Australia, very, very different. And in Japan League One. And yeah, there's a big part of me that's curious about how they would translate against each other, both in terms of style and in terms of quality, because we don't really know. And there is a bit of that itch to scratch. And personally, I don't care for any of the like Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere like debates.
We all get over it, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we really think of it that much in the Northern Hemisphere, to be honest. But I remember...
not anymore.
No, not anymore. But I don't know. I remember there was the Club World Cup in sevens that happened like 10 plus years ago. And I remember watching that, and I can't remember what the event was, but I remember really enjoying it. And I think it was won by like the Blues, or as in like Auckland Blues, I want to say, or someone like that. And I remember really, really enjoying it because it was a clash of styles. It was players that wouldn't play against each other regularly. And suddenly, you've got a massive stage where you can celebrate some of the really big club rugby players who won't make it international level. And that's not a bad thing.
It's the great thing about the Champions Cup, isn't it, right? That like the Champions Cup allows players like Arthur Etienne, who's now won it with 3 clubs, but he can go have this incredible career playing at test intensity and in the highest pressure games without himself needing to go and win caps if he's not that kind of player, right? Which he with all due, fantastic player, isn't an international.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. That's one of the great things about it. And the Club World Cup will add an extra layer on top of that. And there is something exciting as the fan of a club, right? It's one of my kind of like dreams when a pool draw is done every year. I want to see, as an Ospreys fan, I want to see them play Toulouse, right? With Dupont and Untermac and all of this, because they're such a glamorous, brilliant club to watch. They feel like a note in rugby history. The thought of playing them is so exciting. And
even if they batter you, which they would.
Yeah,
Like,
but I'd feel absolutely, but I don't give a shit. Like I just want that game to take place, right?
It's
and
not
you want
about
the
trying to beat
individual
them.
small moments of like
Yeah.
seeing Kieran Williams or Morgan Morris or whoever, like
watching
your
Harry
club
Deves
players.
tackle Antoine Dupont
Exactly.
would be a big moment.
That's what you want, right? And that would go double for teams like the Crusaders,
Yeah.
where it isn't possible, right? Even teams like the Fiji and Drua, where you get a real sense of them being like this completely like foreign, brilliant club that you love watching, but are never going to play against your guys. That would be really, really exciting.
Yeah.
That is the huge benefit to this. And I think we're both broadly in the camp of like, if you can make it work in a season and you're not burning players out, great. However,
I want to see like Moana Pacifica versus Connaught.
yeah,
I want to see that.
Yeah. However, the way that they have found to make this work in the season, and that is one of the big caveats, right, is you have 2 seasons that don't quite align. They're trying to bring together a more global calendar. They're trying to use this Nations Cup, which is supposedly still starting next year. They're trying to use all of this to come together. A big part of this is it would be played as a curtain raiser to the Nations Cup.
Okay.
That this would take place. There'd be these kind of finals. There'd be 1 week off. Then the Nations Cup.
Again, in concept,
start.
I don't mind that too much.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, a big part, and I imagine this will come up when you tell me more about the format. These players are playing too many games.
Yeah.
Just generally, there are already too many games in the rugby calendar.
Yeah.
The top 14 season doesn't finish. Like it just goes on forever and ever. Like as soon as the best players, like the players who are good enough to be playing international rugby, finish and get what would be their off season, they're off playing for their countries, and then they get a few weeks off.
Yeah.
And rugby is too physical a sport to allow that, and to just be able to play it all year round, you know. And because it's a winter sport, in both hemispheres, you know, but obviously they line up differently because of woke
Geography.
And, yeah.
Woke geography.
Yeah, but that is a concern because I feel like you would have to put potentially 2 seasons on pause, like the season either side of this for both hemispheres, in order to get everyone in the same room at the same time.
So the way they've come up with doing this is from the 2028 season, so the first one will take place in 2028, so the 2027-28 season, the season following a World Cup, right? For those seasons when the Club World Cup is taking place, which will be every 4 years, as per the general World Cups, men's and women's, they will move the finals of the domestic competitions forwards, right? So they will get round doing this by changing a few weeks in the calendar.
I was going to say, because it sucks for the teams that don't qualify.
So what is happening, right? The plan is the season will start as usual. The European domestic season will start as usual in September. Super Rugby will start as usual in February, right? That'll be as per. However, the Champions Cup, which is obviously a huge part of the European season, which is dotted in between, you have these blocks of 2 weeks at a time throughout the season.
Yeah.
That will end by Christmas. So they will only play the pool stage.
What?
You'll play, yep. So there will be...
How does that work?
The pools played, right? At the end of the pools, 8 teams will be remaining. They'll get to kind of the quarterfinal stage, right? After 4 rounds. Those will be the 8 teams that qualify for...
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The World Club Cup, right? So there will be essentially no Champions Cup that season. Instead, it will be replaced by qualifiers for the World Club Cup.
Would there be like a challenge cup or something that everybody else can play
They
for?
haven't said this.
Right.
They haven't made that clear.
Because I think if there's something in place that, like, you can dangle a carrot for the people who aren't realistically going to qualify. Because I'm not being funny, there will be some teams who, on their drawing board at the start of the season, will be saying, we want to survive the top 14.
Yeah.
We want to survive relegation.
Yeah.
We want to finish top half, you know, who won't be thinking remotely about this. You think about in football, in the Premier League, right? And I don't follow football at all, but there's like, 18 teams in the Premier League, and the top maybe 6 get European football out of it?
I walk past 3 people in T-shirts. Offices in Nottingham, right? I walk past 3 people in Forest and Europe T-shirts in the last couple of days.
Yeah, because that's a huge deal that they've made it to Europa League.
Yeah.
They've not even made it to the Champions League, which would have been insane if they did.
Yeah.
But you think about that, like, they wouldn't have imagined that at the start of the season, and yet there are teams who would probably be drawing at the start of the season, like, let's aim for the Europa League, and they're finishing 15th or whatever. You know, you think of it similarly to this. Certain teams will be going, brilliant, we can pretty much etch our name into the Club World Cup. If you're Leinster, for example, right, you can guarantee almost that you will finish good enough in the URC that you're going to come in one of those spots. And you've not told me how many spots there are in each league yet, but we'll get on to that. But I'd imagine
there's 8 from Europe.
Right. It's enough that Leinster will get in.
It will be the same qualification process as the Champions Cup.
Yeah.
Those same teams will go into the same pool stage, except at the end of the pool stage, there'll be no knockouts. They'll just go straight into the Club World Cup.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. But the thing is,
that will be wrapped up by Christmas as well, and the Club World Cup doesn't take place at the end of the domestic season, so that won't happen until June.
Yeah.
So there's then like a 6-month wait where form can change so drastically.
That's it. If you're, let's just say Newcastle Falcons, right? Let's even say that this big new backer guy comes in and they drastically improve in the next 2 years, okay? And let's say Worcester Warriors get magically promoted back to the Prem, so there's a couple more teams in there. So it's less likely they're going to get relegated. Not that that's going to be a thing in the Prem, but you know what I mean. They, at the start of the season, probably aren't going, okay, we're going to aim for that Club World Cup spot because we have to be in top couple in the Prem, we have to do really well in Europe, whatever. You know, they are probably going, let's aim for top half. That is them being ambitious, okay? If they could have a Challenge Cup or something like that, where you can go, brilliant, let's aim to get to the semi-finals of that.
There is no word on that
something we can play for.
Yeah. So I'll just run through the rest of the format, and then we'll discuss the kind of ins and outs of it, right? So, 8 teams from the Champions Cup will qualify. There will be no winner of the Champions Cup that year, right? When you look over the past winners of the Champions Cup, there'll just be every 4th year it won't take place.
So they're like qualifiers, like World Cup qualifiers in football.
Essentially, the Champions Cup is being replaced by qualifiers for the World Cup every 4 years, right? So it just won't take place, which is a hugely disappointing thing, I think, on that angle.
Isn't it?
Like that there won't be a champion. In some ways, there's an article in The Guardian that said that they're throwing away the entire history of the Champions Cup with this.
Yeah, devil's advocate though, right? We love the Champions Cup and the history that goes with it, right? I think what it is will the love for the World Club Cup when that becomes established outweigh, a quarter essentially of your love for the Champions Cup? I guess that's the debate, isn't it?
That's it, and that's the thing we'll come back to, right?
Yeah.
However, they will then play. So 8 teams will qualify from that, from the URC, from the top 14, from the Premiership, and hypothetically the Black Lion can qualify through that as well, right? The Black Lion win the Challenge Cup, they can qualify for the Champions Cup. So hypothetically, there's a team from Georgia in the mix as well there, right? So you've got all those nations: South Africa, Ireland, France, Scotland, Wales, England,
Justice
France,
for Bucharest
Georgia.
Wolves, man.
Yeah.
Get them in there.
But so you've got kind of 8 nations covered by 8 spots, right? You then have 7 teams from Super Rugby. The top 7 from Super Rugby that season will qualify automatically, of 11 teams.
Right. So rephrase it, only 4 teams from Super Rugby don't qualify.
Yeah.
I understand the difficulty around this now.
Yeah.
Because they clearly want to balance the amount of teams from each hemisphere.
Yeah.
But the difficulty is there's less clubs in the Southern Hemisphere.
There are fewer clubs. South Africa already play in Europe, right? So they're taking spots from that European pool as well. So you do end up with a disbalance there.
I can't help but wonder if it should work like South Africa have their own category.
But the other side of this, and apparently this was point in negotiation, is Super Rugby get more clubs because the first 2, so over the course of 8 years, right, 4 years apart, the first 2 will both be played in Europe. And the South African clubs are more willing to uproot their season at the end and move afterwards to Europe for a month than the European teams were to do the opposite and go to Australia or New Zealand. And I think it is an easier pitch for the Brumbies to come to London or to Paris for a month, right? Than to try and move a bigger squad of more players. If you are a French team and you've got a 50-player squad, moving them all down to go and live in Brisbane for a few weeks is more difficult. Then on top of those 7 Super Rugby clubs, there will be 1 Japanese club.
Okay.
The winner of Japan Rugby League 1 will qualify as well.
That's great. Yeah. I really like that, the involving those. There's a lot of question marks about this.
That is the full lineup, right? So it'll be 16 teams will qualify, and it'll go through as a straight, I believe, they haven't confirmed this for certain, but a straight round of 16, straight shootout.
Okay, and that's kind of fun,
Yeah.
like FA Cup style.
Yeah,
I keep
yeah.
using football analogies here, but yeah. But I guess it is the closest thing to that because
Yeah.
like rugby's never had enough resources in either hemisphere to get something like
Yeah,
that. Whereas if you bring the whole world together, then maybe it's the case. But I can't help but feel like when, with the exception of the one Japanese team that they put in there, which I'm so hyped to see how that stands up
Yeah.
to everything else because they have world-class players
That
playing
is the
over there.
fascinating thing. That's the thing I really want to see.
It's an anomaly,
right?
isn't it?
And I think for a lot of us, there's a lot of people going like, "Oh, it is cool to see, Munster against the Chiefs." Right? That is a fun matchup. I am excited by that. But also, I want to see how MLR teams, how Super Rugby America teams, how particularly Japanese teams stack up against the others.
Yeah.
I want to see that. And maybe we get around to after 1 year and it's terrible. Do you want a list of clubs that would have qualified if it was happening this season?
Yeah, go on then. Hit me.
So as a hypothetical of like who would have got in, right? So Bordeaux, Northampton Saints, Toulouse, Leinster, Munster, Toulon, Castres, and Glasgow would be your European teams.
It's a good lineup.
Which is a solid lineup. You've only got one Premiership team.
Yeah, that's
in
a shame. Only one
Saints.
Prem team.
Yeah, but that's the nature of it, right? Because they're
Yeah.
looking from the European pool rather than.
And it's the best teams, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing, because I can't help but feel like that pitch is just basically European rugby versus Super Rugby. It's kind of what it is.
This comes back to a whole other point about the European Cup we'll do down the line. But
Yeah.
there's been this big problem. I think one of the things that broke the European Cup to a degree was they moved it from being competition between 6 nations to, plus you had the Spanish and Russian teams in the Champions Cup, Challenge Cup, so they could qualify hypothetically as well, to being...
and
between-
Romanian.
Yeah.
God.
But they moved it to being between... No, the Romanian teams dropped out in the 90s, after 94, 97 or
Bring
something.
back Wolves, man.
So, yeah. But they changed it to basically being a competition between 3 leagues. And people are invested in how their nation does. No one cares about how their league does.
No.
And I know there's the hashtag URC Best League stuff, but realistically, which are you more likely to be invested in, the Irish or the URC? If you are Irish, right?
Best league is MLR or Pro Day Deux, but it's fine.
No Pro D teams qualifying. Can you imagine how disinterested Cass would be in this?
Yeah.
The sheer level of 15 they'll send out to play the Brumbies.
Yeah. And the thing is, it counteracts what I was saying earlier about there being too many games.
Yeah.
But when it's straight into round of 16, that's just four games
I guess so, yeah.
maximum. And you could be out
Play it
by
over a
round
course of a
1.
month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that wonders whether it would be quite anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Just thinking back to what I was saying earlier about, does it outweigh my love of the of the
A quarter of the Champions Cup.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if 4 games is enough, or 4 rounds is enough for me to kind of fall in love with it. But also maybe I will, because it'll be so chaotic, hopefully.
Yeah,
But
and hopefully that final will be of great intensity, rather than being, there is a potential for teams to send second 15s because they've already won the domestic league. And
also,
that's
is
over.
it worth sacrificing the Champions Cup and changing
the
the
big
whole
question.
calendar for 4
I don't know if it
games?
is.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is. I love the idea of this, of the Club World Cup existing in some form. I don't like this version. The Super Rugby teams, just run through them quickly, right?
hit
So
me.
the Crusaders, the Brumbies, the Chiefs, the Hurricanes, the Reds, Moana Pacifica, and the Blues. Right? The Blues are having a terrible season, but are defending champions, so would get it in most systems. Moana Pacifica are the interesting one.
That would be great fun.
They slide in.
Hardy Savir versus the world.
I know. Then you
I
have
love
one.
how much that team is just him.
Yeah.
It's so good.
You then have the winner of the Japanese league. Obviously, that final is still coming up as
Yeah.
we record this. But if you went purely off league standings, right, this season with the final yet to be played, Toshiba Brave Lupus would be the one Japanese club. So you'd have Michael Leach coming in and take on the world
That'd
as
be brilliant.
which would be brilliant. That could give you a really interesting lineup. It could give you a whole new range of teams for Leinster to lose to in the semi-finals, which would be the main attraction. There is a big question of how much a team like Castres or Toulon might qualify. How much would they give a shit?
Yeah.
That's a whole question. But the other thing is you're ripping apart the European season. For the Super Rugby teams, that works grand. That's great.
Yeah.
Most of the teams are getting in. You're qualifying. Similar to the Premiership in Europe, right? That most of the teams are qualifying. The Premiership do have way too many spots in the European Cup at the minute. And yet, it's great for English fans.
Yeah.
Because you get to be in there, you get to watch your teams, you get to watch them compete against the best and challenge themselves in different ways and styles. That's really exciting. Great for Super Rugby. From a European point of view, I'm not hugely endeared by this. You mentioned Newcastle as an example earlier, right? If you're a team like Connacht, or as an Ospreys fan, like Fitz, or Bristol or someone who is traditionally a mid-table team, right? And you want to qualify for this, which I would want to if as a fan, right? And if I was a player. What you need to do as a European team at the minute, right? As a Super Rugby team, you probably need to win 6 games over the course of that season, right? As a European team, realistically, what you need to qualify for this competition, right, is the season before, if you are in the URC, you are going to need to finish in the top 8 and hope the URC team doesn't win the Challenge Cup, in which case you need to finish top 7, right? So realistically, most seasons that means winning 10 or 11 games. You've got to win there. You then, on top of that, have to then go into the pool stages and come out in the top 8. So you probably need to win, of those 4 games, at least 3 of them. So you are, in order to qualify, looking at winning about 14, 15 games probably.
It's a lot of
all
effort.
in all, yeah, to get your seeding up as well and everything, in order to qualify. Where, as I say, like, there's a chance that the team finishing 4th bottom of Super Rugby that gets in wins 4 games that year.
Yeah, that's a weird one though, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, again, almost the qualifying is in a way more exciting than the cup itself. And it's easy for me to say that before I've watched it because we're in the entertainment business and, you know, there's a chance that... I remember the first time when Europe did round of 16, it was because of COVID, and it was the most insane, hectic
Yeah, it was
round,
amazing. It was great.
and we loved it. And I think they just kept it for vibes off
They
the
kept
back
it
of
because
that.
people enjoyed it once, right?
Yeah.
And it hasn't worked since.
No.
It hasn't been working lately. Teams, you know who's going to win because you have a home team who commits to it, and then you have a second team who, you know, it's a French team who sends their kids away.
Yeah. What do you
Or
think of
an English team who
what do you think
sends
of the straight to knockout thing?
I like that.
I
that
quite
isn't
like
confirmed as a format. You know,
Okay.
it might be they do pools and they go to a final.
Because we've
whatever.
never seen that in rugby.
Yeah.
A straight to knockout competition, and we've always kind of said like it's such a shame that because rugby is literally too physical a sport that you couldn't do the FA Cup in rugby.
Yeah.
If you did a tournament, let's say in England, where the top, let's say 4 or 5 divisions, you know, all sent in, and you had 100 teams in there in the start, and it's straight to knockout. You're having, you know, old Northamptonians, whatever, playing against like
Leicester Tigers.
Leicester Tigers. You know, naturally, it's not going to be that safe.
It would be a fairer fight for them to fight an actual tiger.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that would be a shame. And likewise, you know, you'll have like, I don't know, Northampton Saints coming up against like a superpower like Long Eaton. You know, like it's not fair on those smaller teams.
It's really not. It's really not.
But yeah, I feel like something like that is quite exciting to me, where you can have an underdog taking somebody to extra time and it being like really on a knife edge, and it being like you've got to take the points at all times. Because knockout rugby is great, but only certain teams get to experience it. But also, I suppose this is still quite exclusive, and it combats what I was saying earlier, because as I say, rugby players and rugby teams play too many games as it is. There is too much rugby going on at the moment, but there's like something like that one going, there's too much politics now and again, but there is too much rugby being played by these athletes because it takes so much toll on their bodies. I would love this if basically, literally, like every pro team was in there.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Like, and I know this is a dream world. Like, if this is a video game, you could do it. You could just chuck literally everybody on the fire and go, you're straight to knockout, lads. Okay, it's Old Glory DC versus Toulouse.
Yeah.
Give it a go. Toulouse obviously whip him to the ground, but it's fun because they were there on the same pitch. And then, great, Old Glory, you're done. But also at the same time, you have to change the whole season because not everyone plays at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not logistically possible.
The way I picture it, right, is instead of having qualifying as usual for the Champions Cup, you throw everyone into a straight knockout competition there in Europe. All the European teams in at once, right? And you slowly dwindle it out till you have 8 teams remaining. And then those teams play against 8 teams from the rest of the world that qualify in the same way. That would be great. As it is, there is a situation, realistically, this could like genuinely happen, right, where a team, you know, like Munster has a shit season the season before, then strikes back and wins the league, right? Wins the URC, the season of the World Club Cup, but then isn't qualified because they didn't qualify for the Champions Cup the year before.
And they're the form team.
Yeah.
That everyone wants to watch.
But they weren't in the pot, so they couldn't get in.
They want to watch them take on the Reds.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And so because they're moving this to happen after the end of the domestic seasons, that you potentially, there's a realistic world, right, where if that went ahead and we had those teams we just talked about playing in a World Club Cup after the end of this domestic season, right, there is a world in which you have Saracens go on and win the Premiership, or Leicester Tigers go and win the Premiership. You have Lyon go on and win the top 14. You know, the Bulls, right? The Bulls go on, realistically, could go and win the URC. None of those teams might be in this competition.
Yeah.
And you'd be going, well, hold on, we've got the winner of Super Rugby playing these teams that came like 7th in their domestic leagues because they focus on Europe for the first half of the season, or they had a good first half of the year, then dropped off in the second half. The whole thing is up in the air. The one other thing I will mention, they're looking at Barcelona to host the first final.
That would be class.
Which would be great fun.
That would be a really good way of
have it in a neutral venue, build that out, build it as like a destination thing. The goal being they want fans to travel from all over the world.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
It's really, really good for the Brave Loopers, this.
Yeah.
Or for whichever Japanese team is on top in 2018, go on the Wild Knights. No, 2028. But yeah, I don't know, it's difficult because rugby's not big enough that there's an elite league in like every country.
Yeah.
If this was as big as football, you could basically just go, great, here are like 16 teams, or 16 leagues rather, they get 2 teams each, right? And they're across the world and it's a proper representative. Instead, you could boil this down and you could argue this is spread across 3 leagues.
Yeah.
Because counting the European Champions Cup as one. Like, I know that that's 4 leagues within 1 league, or 5 leagues, whatever, within one. But you could boil it down to being Champions Cup, Super Rugby, and 1 Japanese team. And that kind of being it.
There are no MLR and no Super Rugby America teams in, which is disappointing. I would have loved to see an MLR team.
Warren Gatland's Penarol could have gone.
So that's a shame. That's another disappointing.
Even if they got battered, as long as they are physically safe enough playing against
it's about the taking part.
It kind of is though.
Yeah.
But it's about the spectacle because you and I think we would both say our favourite thing about the World Cup, other than like maybe the final or like the finals, right, is watching Chile or Portugal playing against the All Blacks, the Springboks, the Wallabies, and these big historic nations who have all of the like the world-class players and have all the odds in their favour, right? And every single person tunes into their telly who isn't from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and goes, go on Chile, go on Portugal.
But on top of that, right, it's games like Uruguay against Fiji or Namibia against, Samoa or whoever. And these teams going like, this is our Everest.
Yeah.
Right? And the thought of, Old Glory DC drawing Newcastle Falcons and going, we can beat a Premiership team here and send a proper shockwave through this. People thinking MLR shit.
Exactly.
Like them drawing the Dragons and going, okay, we can go for this here. Like, that would be huge. That'd be so exciting.
Yeah.
There's the other question mark of they are starting with, when the FIFA Club World Cup started, I believe they had 8 teams. So they're starting with double that. So are there too many teams? Should you just be taking the winners and playing semis and final? Or even, some people are saying just playing a European Cup versus Super Rugby's winner. I think you need to keep a Japanese team in there.
Yeah.
I think you want it to feel more international.
Yeah.
But you could take them and the winner of MLR. Say, or the winner of MLR plays the winner of Super Rugby Americas, and you have them.
I don't think it should be exclusionary in any way. And the thing is, there's obviously a whole different side to this because MLR is seen by many as like a retirement league.
Yeah.
You had 43-year-old Martin On who's played over there, like 41-year-old Matt Gitto won MLR.
A development league as well. But also it is great to watch.
It is.
And it is getting a better and better product every time.
Once again,
there are 3 years until we get there, right? And look at how much better MLR is now than 3 years ago.
One of the best things, once again, about the Rugby World Cup, the International World Cup, is you get moments like Chrysander Borta tackling the beast, down the wing. And
who's Namibia fullback.
Yes, and sorry, 2-time IOB Try of the Year nominee Chrysander Borta. My bad. But you get moments like that of Santiago Arata stepping Aaron Smith. Yeah. You get moments like that are really unlikely, and Gershwin Mouton going toe-to-toe with lads from the Springboks and so on.
There is a little bit of them misunderstanding the appeal of a World Cup.
Yeah.
And going, well, what people like is the end of the competition. And people love that. We all love that, right?
Yeah.
But you're also there for the whole festival.
Yeah.
And I
it's
don't
the
know
celebration
if it'll
of
feel like
rugby.
a festival.
And that's it. I want to see what would happen if you put counter-attacking king Mitch Wilson on a club rugby pitch opposite Ardi Savir.
Yeah.
What on earth would happen if that took place?
Absolutely. I want to see Finn Smith trying to navigate kick tactics to avoid giving Mitch Wilson a chance to counter-attack.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I want to be watching.
Yeah.
However,
And Finn Smith being blown away of like, they're not managing the backfield at all. What should I do here?
they're just giving to this.
Do I
one
run
ball
everything
bloke,
or do I
and he's
just
running
keep
everything
kicking? We're 50 points up, but what do we do?
So, what's your overall impression of what we look to have coming in free season?
Once again, conceptually, I love it.
Yeah.
I really want this to happen, but I don't know if it's worth it yet.
Yeah.
Because, once again, rugby isn't yet, or just isn't big enough that there are elite leagues here. And I think that, once again, the question mark becomes, we bring up SLAR, we bring up MLR, there's many, many other leagues that we could probably throw out there. Are these teams physically good enough that it would be safe for them to play against the top teams in Europe? And the answer is we don't really know. They've maybe at best played friendlies against each other and so on. But yeah, I don't know. I want this to happen, but I don't know. Nobody really knows what the best format is yet.
Yeah.
And there are people who are put in charge. We're just some people talking about it on YouTube, you know.
The big thing that gets me is the loss of a Champions Cup one season.
Yeah.
Like, that feels like bullshit.
It's
that
a
feels
gamble,
Like
that
when you
is.
look down the list of winners, right, and one year there just won't be one. And I know over the last few years it has fallen into a pattern of being the same teams over and over again. But we're finally, I feel like, starting to get out of that and starting to look towards a world in which it is more even and open again.
Very true.
And the thought we might lose that.
Very true.
For a competition which is so outlandish and demanding like such depth of your squad, that realistically, are we going to be in a situation where there are only 4 teams that can compete with it?
It's a good point. It sucks if you're like, let's say Montpellier hit some amazing form in 2028. I keep saying 2018, in 2028, and they are the best team in Europe, right? They then lose a semi-final to the Brumbies, let's say, and the Brumbies end up playing against, let's say, the Blues, another Super Rugby team in the final, right? And then suddenly, Montpellier's season isn't defined by winning the European Cup. It's being, we were the European team who got the furthest. Or the same vice versa.
Yeah.
If you're the Southern Hemisphere
It would
team
be
who gets
very
the furthest,
funny if it happened to Leinster.
and you lose to Leinster or whoever to lose in the final,
Yeah.
right? Then suddenly it's, we're Club World Cup runners-up rather than we're Super Rugby champions.
There's also a chance, right, that if you do navigate the Cup so that the first round is entirely Northern Hemisphere teams playing against, or, the Champions Cup qualifying teams playing against Super Rugby teams and the Japanese teams, right? There's a chance that all the Super Rugby teams lose the first round.
Yeah,
and you're then through to just doing quarterfinals of Europe.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
I don't know. There's so many question marks around this.
It's unlikely, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Like, all the other way around, right? Like, it could be that it's just like you enter the Japanese team to Super Rugby. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many questions, so much up in the air.
How class would it be if the Wild Knights won it?
That'd be amazing.
First
That'd be
one.
amazing. I'd love that. But yeah, we'll see again in 3 years if this goes ahead, when it goes ahead. It looks like it is going ahead. They've confirmed they're looking into it.
Yeah, but they said that about the World League.
Yeah, which is supposed to start next year. And supposedly this will curtain raise for the second one or something. Who knows? Who gives a shit? It's all rugby in it, and we'll watch it and we'll enjoy it. I'll probably go, look at the tries they did. Look at how they kicked the ball. Yeah. And then we'll just have to get on with our lives after that.
Well, I think we've just told the audience they've just wasted some time watching this.
No. It's not a waste of time, right?
All
because I want you to predict who do you think will win the first World League in 2028?
World League or World Cup?
Sorry, Club World Cup. Who do you think will win it? 2028.
Crusaders.
Oh.
They'll be back. They'll come back and they'll really go hard on it. I've got no reason to believe that. Actually, can I change my mind?
Yeah?
Toulouse.
Yeah, I was going to say Toulouse. I think Leinster will bottle it. It'll be funny, but I can see Leinster
They'll
doing
still have Antoine Dupont at that point, so they will win it.
How do you rate the Dragons' chances?
End of video.